Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 6, Gilderoy Lockhart. The next day, however, Harry barely grinned once. Things started to go downhill from breakfast in the Great Hall. The four longhouse table ever laden with turrets of porridge, plates of kippers, mountain of toast, and dish of eggs and bacon beneath the enchanted ceiling. Today, a dull, cloudy gray. Harry and Ron sat down at the Gryffindor table next to Hermione, who had her copy of Voyage with Vampire prop upon open against a milk jug. There was slight stiffness in the way she said "morning," which told Harry that she was all still disapproving of the way they had arrived. Neville Longbottom, on the other hand, greeted them cheerfully. Neville was a rounded face and an accident into Brown Boy, though the worst memory of anyone Harry had ever met. Post due any minute. I think Rand's sending on a few things I forgot. Harry had only just started his porch when, sure enough, there was a rushing sound overhead and hundreds or so owls streamed in, circling the hall and dropping letter and package into the chattering crowd. A big and lumpy parcel bounced up Neville's head, and a second later something large and gray fell into Hermione's jug, spraying them all with milk and feather. "Errol!" said Ron, pulling the bread-rigged owl out of my feet. Errol stumped unconsciousness onto the table, his leg in the air, and a damp red envelope in his beak. "Oh no!" Ron gasped. "It's all right. He's still alive," said Hermione, prodding Errol gently with the tip of her finger. "It's not that. It's that." Ron was pointing at the red envelope. It looked quite ordinary to Harry, but to Ron and Neville were both looking as though they expected to explode. "What's the matter?" said Harry. She's sent me a howler," said Ron faintly. "You'd better open it, Ron," said Neville in a timid whisper. "It'll be worse if you don't. My grand sent me one once, and I ignored it, and," he gulped, "it was horrible." Harry looked from the petrified face to the red envelope. "What's a howler?" he said, but Ron's whole attention was fixed on the letter, which had been sorry, it's my family. Maybe I'll wait here a minute. Yeah, that's better. So now they can't open it anymore. "What's a howler?" he said. The whole attention was fixed on the letter, which had begun to smoke at the corner. "Open it," Van Neville urged. "It's all be over in a few minutes." Ron stretched out a shaking hand, eased the envelope from Errol's beak, and slid it open. Neville stuffed his finger in his ear. A split second later, Harry knew why. He thought for a moment it had exploded. A roar of sound filled the huge hall, shaking dust from ceiling. "Stealing the car? I wouldn't have been surprised if they expelled you. You wait till I get hold of you. I don't suppose you stopped to think what your father and I went through when we saw it had gone." Mrs. Weasley yelled 100 times louder than usual, made the plate and spoon rattle on the table, and echoed deafeningly off the stone wall. People throughout the hall were swiveling around to see who had received the howler, and Ron sank so low in his chair that his only crimson forehead could be seen. "Letter from Dumbledore last night. I thought your father would die of shame. We didn't bring you up to behave like this. You and Harry could both have died." Harry had been wondering when his name was going to crop up. He tried very hard to look as though he couldn't hear the voice that was absolutely making his eardrum throb. "Absolutely disgusted. Your father facing an inquiry at work. It's entirely your fault, and if you put another toe out of your line, we'll bring you straight back home." A ringing silence fell. The red envelope, which had dropped from Ron's hand, burst into flame and curled into ashes. Harry and Ron sat stunned, as though a tidal wave had just passed over them. A few people laughed, and gradually a babble of talk broke out again. Hermione closed Voyage with the Vampire and looked down the of top of Walda, Ron head. Well, I don't know what you expected, Mom, but you don't tell me I deserve it, snapped Ron. Harry pushed his porch away. His inside were burning with guilt. Mr. Weasley was facing an inquiry at work. After all, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley has done for him over the summer. But he had no time to dwell on this. Professor McGonagall was moving along Gryffindor table, handing out timetable. Harry took his and saw that they had double herbology with Hufflepuff first. Harry, Ron, and Hermione left the castle together, crossed the vegetable patch, and made for the greenhouse, where the magical plants were kept. At least the Howler had done one good thing. Hermione seemed to think they had been not punished enough and was being perfectly friendly again, as though As they near as they neared the greenhouse, they saw the rest of the class standing outside, waiting for Professor Sprout. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had only just joined them when she started striding into view across the lawn, accompanied by Gilderoy Lockhart. Professor Sprout, armor full of bandage, and with another twitch of guilt, Harry spotted the Whomping Willow in the distance. Several of his friends now in sling. Professor Sprout was a squat little witch who wore a patch hat over her flyaway hair. There was a usually large amount of earth on her clothes. Her fingernail would have made Aunt Petunia faint. Gilderoy Lockhart, however, was emblazoned in sweeping robes of turquoise, his golden hair shining under a perfectly positioned turquoise hat with gold trimming. "Oh, hello there," Lockhart called, beaming around at the assembled student. "Just been showing Professor Sprout the right way to Dr. Whomping Willow. But I don't want you running away with the idea that I'm better at herbology than she is. I just happen to have met several of those exotic plants on my travel. Greenhouse 3 today, chaps," said Professor Sprout. Sprout, who was looking distinctly disgruntled, not at all her usual cheerful self. There was a murmur of interest. They only ever worked in House 1 before. Greenhouse 3 house far more interesting and dangerous plants. Professor Sprout took a large key from her belt and locked the door. Harry caught a whiff of her damp earth and fertilizers, mingling with the heavy perfume of some giant umbrella-sized flower dangling from the ceiling. He was about to follow Ron and Hermione inside when Lockhart hand chatted. "Harry, I've been wanting a word. You don't mind if he's a couple of minutes late, do you, Professor Sprout?" Judging by Professor scowl, she did mind, but Lockhart said, "That's the ticket," and closed the greenhouse door in their faces. "Harry," said Lockhart, his large white teeth gleaming in the sunlight, as he shook his head. Harry. Completely nonplussed, Harry said nothing. "When I heard, well, of course, it was my fault. Could have kicked myself." He had no idea what he was talking about. He was about to say so when Lockhart went on. "Don't know what would have been more shocked. Flying a car to Hogwarts? Well, of course, I knew at once why you'd done it. I stood out a mile. Harry. It was remarkable how he could show every one of those brilliant teeth even when he wasn't talking. Give you a taste of publicity, didn't I?" said Lockhart. "Gave you the bug. You got into the front page of the paper with me, and you couldn't wait to do it again." "Oh, no, Professor. See, Harry, said Lockhart, reaching out and grasping his shoulder. "I understand. The natural to wait a bit more once you've had that first taste. And I blame myself for giving you that, because it was bound to go to your head. And see, you're a young man. You can't start flying cards to try and get yourself noticed. Just calm down, all right? Plenty of time for all that when you're older. Yes, I know what you're thinking. It's all right for him. He's an international famous wizard already. But when I was 12, I was just as much as a nobody as you are now. In fact, I would say I was even more a nobody. I mean, a few people have heard of you, haven't they? All that bit with he whose moon must not be named." He glanced at the lightning scar on Harry's forehead. I know. It's not quite as good as winning Witch Weekly Most Charming Smile Award 5 times in a row, as I have. Sorry for, unfortunately, like, visitor. Okay. He glanced at the lightning-scarred Harry's forehead. I know. It's not quite as good as winning which weekly most charming smile word 5 times in a row as I have, but it's a start, Harry. It's a start. He gave Harry a hearty wink and strode off. Harry stood stunned for a few seconds, then remembering he was supposed to be in the greenhouses, he opened the door and slid inside. Professor Sprout was standing behind a restal bench in the center of the greenhouse, about 20 pairs of different colored earmuffs lying on the bench. When Harry had taken his place between Ron and Hermione, she said, "We'll be reporting Mandrake today. Now, who can tell me the properties of Mandrake?" To nobody's surprises, Hermione's hand was the first in the air. Mandrake or Mandrake is a powerful restorative, said Hermione, sounding as usual as though she swallowed the textbook. It is used to return people who've been transfigured or cursed to their original state. Excellent! 10 points to Gryffindor, said Professor Sprout. The Mandrake form an essential part of most intonated. It is also, however, dangerous. Who can tell me why? Hermione had nearly missed Harry's glass as it shot up again. The cry of the Mandrake is fatal to anyone who hears it, she said promptly. Preciously, take another 10 point, said Professor Sprout. Now, the Mandrake that we have here are still very young. She pointed to a row of deep trays she spoke, and everyone shuffled forward for a better look. 100 or so toughy little plants, purplish green in color, were growing there in a row. They looked quite unremarkable to Harry, who didn't have the slightest idea what Hermione meant, but the cry of the Mandrake. Everyone take a pair of earmuffs, said Professor Sprout. There was a scramble as everyone tried to seize a pair that wasn't pink and fluffy. When I tell you to put them on, make sure your ears are completely covered, said Professor Sprout, when it is safe to remove. And then I will give you a thumb up, right? Earmuff on! Harry snapped the earmuff over his ears. They shut out sounded completely. Professor Sprout put a pink fluffy pair over her own ears, rolled up the sleeve of her robe, grasped one of the fluffy plant firmly, and pulled a hand. Harry let out gasps of surprise that no one could hear. Instead of roots, a small, muddy, and extremely ugly baby popped out of the earth. The leaves were growing right out of his head. He had a pale green mottled skin, and was clearly bawling at the top of his lung. Professor Sprout took a large plant pot from under the table and plunged the Mandrake into it, burying himself in the dark, damp compost until only the tufted leaves were visible. Professor Sprout dusted off her hand, gave them all a thumb up, and removed her own earmuff. As our Mandrake are only seedling, their cries won't kill yet, she said calmly, as though she'd just done nothing more exciting than water bigamy. However, they'll knock you out for several hours, and as I'm sure none of you want to miss your first day back, make sure your earmuffs are secretly in places while you work. I'll attract your attention when it is time to pack up. For the tray, there's this large supply of pot here, composed in the sack over there, and be careful of the venomous tentacular, it's teething. She gave a sharp slap to his big-eyed, dark red plant as she spoke, making it draw a long feather that had been inching sneakily over her shoulder. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were joined on the tray by a curly-haired Hufflepuff boy. Harry knew by his sight, but had never spoken to. Justin Filch Fletchy, he said brightly, shaking Harry by the hand. Know who you are, of course, the famous Harry Potter, and you're Hermione Granger, always top in everything. Hermione beamed as she had her hand shaken too. And Ron Weasley, wasn't that your flying car? Ron didn't smile. The howler was obviously still in his mind. The Lockhart's something, isn't he? Said Justin happily, as they began filling their plant pots with dragon dung compost. Awfully brave chap. Have you read his book? I'd have died for if they'd been cornered in the telephone box by a werewolf. But he said Cole and Zap just fantastic. My name was down for Elton. I I can't tell you how glad I am here. I am came. I came here instead. Of course, Mother was slightly disappointed, but since I made her read Lockhart book, I think she's begun to see how useful it is to really have a fully trained wizard in the family. After that, they didn't have much chance to talk. Their earmuffs were back on, and they needed to concentrate on Mandrake. Professor Sprout had made it extremely easy, but it wasn't that Mandrake didn't like coming out of the earth, but didn't seem to want to go back into it either. They squirmed, kicked, failed their sharp little fists, and gnashed their teeth. Harry spent 10 whole minutes trying to squash a particularly fat one into a pot. By the end of the classes, Harry, like everyone else, was a sweaty, aching, and covered in earth. They tramped back to the castle for a quick wash, and then Gryffindor hurried off to Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall classes were always hard work, but today was especially difficult. Everything Harry had learned last year seemed to have leaked out of his head during the summer. He was supposed to be turning a beetle into a button, but all he managed to do was to give us a beetle a lot of exercise as he scuttled over the desk, top avoiding his wand. Ron was having far a worse problem. He had patched up his wand with his borrowed tape it, but it seemed to be damaged beyond repair. It kept crackling and sparking at odd moments, and every time Ron tried to transfigure his beetle, it engulfed him in thick gray smoke, which smelled of rotten eggs. Unable to see what he was doing, Ron accidentally squashed his beetle with his elbow and had to ask for a new one. Professor McGonagall wasn't pleased. Harry was relieved to hear the lunch bell. His brain felt like a wrung sponge. Everyone fell out of the classroom except him, and Ron was whacking his wand fiercely on the desk. Stupid, useless thing! Write over another one, Harry suggested as the wand let off a woolly bang like a firecracker. Oh yeah, and get another howler back, said Ron, stuffing the now hissing wand in his back. It's your own fault your wand got snapped. They went down to lunch, where Ron's mood was not improved by Hermione showing them a handful of perfect coat buttons she had produced in Transfiguration. What have we got this afternoon? Said Harry, hastily changing the subject. Defense against dark art, said Hermione at once. Why? Demanded Ron, seizing her timetable. Have you outlined all Lockhart lesson in little hearts? Hermione snatched the timetable back, flushing furiously. They finished lunch and went outside the overcast courtyard. Hermione sat down on a stone step and buried her nose in Roja with Vampire again. Harry and Ron stood talking about Quidditch for several minutes before Harry became aware that he was being closely watched. Looking up, he saw a very small, mosey-haired boy he'd seen trying on Sorting Hat last night, staring at Harry's though transfixed. He was clutching what looked like an ordinary Muggle camera. At the moment Harry looked at him, he went bright red. All right, Harry? I'm Colin Creevey, he said breathlessly, talking attentively, stepped forward. I'm in Gryffindor, too. Do you think would it be all right if I can have a picture? He said, raising the camera hopefully. A picture? He repeated blankly. So I can prove I met you, said Colin Creevey eagerly. My dad and Milkman, he can't believe it. He couldn't believe it either. So I'm taking a lot of pictures to send home to him. And it would be really good if I had one of you. He looked imploring at Harry. Maybe your friend could take it and I could stand next to you. And then, could you sign it? Signed photos? You're giving out signed photo border? Loud, scathing Draco Malfoy voice echoed. Around the courtyard, he had stopped right behind Colin, flanked as he always had at Hogwarts by his large and thirstish cornies, Grey Bay and Goyle. Everyone queue up! Malfoy roared to the ground. Harry Potter giving out signed photos! No, I'm not, said Harry angrily, his fist clenching. Shut up, Malfoy. You're just jealous, piped up Colin, whose entire body was about as thick as Greybear's neck. Jealous, said Malfoy, who didn't need to be shouted at anymore. Half the courtyard was listening in. Of what? I don't want a full scar right across my head, thanks. I don't think getting your head cut open make myself special myself. Eat slug, Malfoy, said Ron angrily. Grady stopped laughing and started rubbing his conker like knuckle in his menching way. Be careful, Weasley, sneered Malfoy. You don't want to start any trouble or your mummy will have to come and take you away from school. He put a shrill, piercing voice. If you put another toe out of line, and out of Southern filth, your nearby laughed loudly at this. Weasley would like a signed photo, Porter, smirked Malfoy. It'll be worth more than his family whole house is. Ron whipped out his spell-taped wand. But Hermione shut Roger with Rambo with a snap and whispered, Look out! What's all this? What's all this? Gilderoy Lockhart was striding toward them, his turquoise robe squirting behind him. Who's giving out signed photos? Harry started to speak, but he was cut short as Lockhart flung an arm around his shoulder and stuttered vigilantly. Turn him out again. We meet again, Harry. Pinchy Lockhart sighed and burning with humiliation. Harry saw Malfoy slide smirking back in the crowd. Come on then, Mr. Creevey, said Mr. Lockhart, beaming at Colin. A double portrait can't say fairer than that, and we'll both sign for you. Colin fumbled up for his camera and took a picture as the bell rang behind them, signaling the start of afternoon classes. Off you go, move along there, Lockhart called to the crowd, and he set off back to the castle with Harry, who was wishing he knew good vanishing spells, still clapped his side. A word to the wise, Harry, said Lockhart importantly as they entered the building through the side door. I covered for you back there with young Gravy. If he was photographing me, too, your schoolfellow won't think you're spatting yourself up so much. Deaf to hearing stammer, Lockhart swept him down a corridor, lined with a staring student, and up a staircase. Yeah, maybe this is better. Let me just say that handing out signed picture at this stage of your career is insensible. Look, like a tad big head, Harry, to be frank. There may well become a time when, like me, you'll need to keep a stack handy wherever you go. But he gave a little chortle. I don't think you're quite there yet. They had reached Lockhart's classroom, and he let Harry go at last. Harry yanked his robe straight and headed for a seat at the very back of the class, where he busied himself with piling 7 of Lockhart book in front of him, so that he could avoid looking at real things. The rest of the class came clattering in, and Ron and Hermione sat down on either side of Harry. You could have fried an egg on your face, said Ron. You'd better hope Creevey doesn't meet Ginny. They're starting a Harry Potter fan club. Shut up, snapped Harry. The last thing he needed was to Lockhart to hear the phrase Harry Potter fan club. When the whole class was seated, Lockhart cleared his throat loudly and silence fell. He reached for to pick up Neville Longbottom's copy of Travel with Trolls and held it up to show his own winking portrait at the front. Me, he said, pointing at it and winking as well. Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class honorary member of Dark Force Defense Legion, and 5-time winner of which weekly most charming smile award. But I don't talk about that. I didn't get rid of the abandoned banshee by smiling at her. He waited for them to laugh. A few people smiled weakly. I see you've all bought a complete set of books. Well done. I thought we'd just start up today with a little quiz. Nothing to worry about, just to check how well you've read them, how much you've taken it. When he had a test paper, he returned to the front of the class and said, "You have 30 minutes. Start now." Harry looked down at his paper and read. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color? What is Gilderoy Lockhart's secret ambition? What, in your opinion, is Gilderoy Lockhart's greatest achievement to date? On and on it went over 3 sides of the paper, right down to when is Gilderoy Lockhart's birthday and what would his ideal gift be? Half an hour later, Lockhart collected his paper and riffled through front of the class. Toot, Harlan, if you remember that my favorite color is lilac. I say that in the year with the Yeti. And if you need to read Wandering with Werewolf more carefully, I clearly stated Jam 12 that my ideal birthday gift would be harmony between all magic and non-magic people, though I wouldn't say no a large bottle of Origin Old Fire whiskey. He gave them another roguish wink. Ron was now staring at Lockhart with an expression of disbelief on his face. Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas, who was standing in front, were shaking with silent laughter. Hermione, on the other hand, was listening to Lockhart with a rapt attention, and gave a start when he mentioned her name. But Miss Hermione Granger knew my secret ambition is to rid the world of evil and market my own range of hair care potion. Good girl. In fact, he flipped the page over. Full mark. Where is Miss Hermione Granger? Hermione raised a trembling hand. Excellent, Lockhart, said Lockhart. Quite excellent. Take 10 points for Gryffindor, and so to business. He bent down his desk and lifted a large covered cage onto it. Now, be warned, it is my job to arm you against the fullest creature known to wizard kind. You may find yourself facing the worst spirit in the room. You know only that no harm can befall you, Wislam, here. All I can ask is that you remain calm. In spite of him, Harry leaned around his pile of books for a better look at the cage. Lockhart placed a hand on his cover. Dean and Seamus had stopped laughing now. Neville was covering in his front row seat. "I must ask you not to scream," said Lockhart in a low voice. "It might provoke them." As the whole class held its breath, Lockhart wiped off his cover. "Yes," said he dramatically. "Freshly caught Cornish pixies." Seamus Finch couldn't control himself. He let out a snort of laughter, which even Lockhart couldn't mistake for a scream of terror. "Yes?" he smiled at Seamus. "Well, they're not very dangerous, are they?" Seamus choked. "Don't be so sure," said Lockhart, waggling a finger annoyingly at Seamus. "Devilishly tricky little biter they can be. The pixies were electric blue and was about 8 inches high, with a pointed face and a voice so shrill it was like lightning to a lot of budgies arguing. The moment the cover had been removed, they had started champering the rocketing around, rattling the bars and pulling bizarre faces at the people nearest them. "Right then," Lockhart said loudly, "let's see what you make of them." And he opened the cage. It was pandemonium. The pixies shot in every direction like rocket. 2 of them seized Neville by the ear and left him in the air. Several shot straight in the window, showering a black row with broken glasses. The rest proceeded in the wreck the classroom more effectively than a rambling in Rhino. They grabbed ink bottles, sprayed the class with them, shredded book and paper, tore a picture from the wall, up down in the waste bin, grabbed back and book threw them out of the smashed window. Within a minute, half of the class was sheltering under the desk, and Neville was swinging on the cannonball in the ceiling. "Come on now, round them up, they're only pixies," Lockhart shouted. He rolled up his sleeve, bandages the one envelope. "Pepkipski, Peternomi." It had absolutely no effect. One of the pixies seized Lockhart's wand and threw it out of the window too. Lockhart gulped and dived under his own desk, narrowly avoiding being squashed by Neville, who fell a second later as the cannonball gave way. The bell rang and they were in a mad rush toward the exit. In the relative calm that followed, Lockhart straightened up, caught sight of Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who were almost at the door, and said, "Well, I ask you three just to nip the rest of them back into their cage." He stepped past them and shut the door quickly behind him. "Can you believe him?" roared Ron. One of the remaining Pixies bit him painfully on the ear. "He just want to give us some hand-on experiment," said Hermione, enrolling two Pixies on once with a clever freezing charm and stuffing them back into their cage. "Hand-on?" said Harry, who was trying to grab Pixie's dancing out of reach with its tongue out. Hermione, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. "Rubbish," said Hermione. You've read his book. Look at all those amazing things he's done." "He say he is done," Ron muttered.